Let's be consistent.
Welcome to today's episode of The Key to Consistency. I am your host, Rakia Collins, and on today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the relationship between love and consistency. And before you shut off today's episode, we're not just talking about romantic love. There are so many ways and so many different avenues through which you can express love, whether it is a relationship you have with a pet, whether it is the love you have for, your family or a friend, the love you have for a particular hobby, right? Like love can be in so many different facets and so many different ways. And so we're really going to be deep diving into love today and really the role that consistency plays when we think about love. And so first, I really want to kind of set the stage with why building a foundation of love is important, right? Love is a very crucial piece and aspect of our relationships. Again, not just thinking about those romantic relationships, but really any relationship where you are, establishing and feeling a sense of, or you want to feel a sense of emotional connection. You want to build trust. You want to have that understanding, right? Like those are some of those indicators that say, hey, like I want to love you, right? And I say that, although it was kind of awkwardly stated, I want to say that because you're not born with the concept of love, right? When you come out of the womb and you have your parents or you have, the people who are caring for you, you naturally feel that emotional connection, that trust, that understanding with them. But you don't necessarily know how to articulate it as love, right? Until, the person who's raising you says to you, I love you. And then you begin to pick up that language and you begin to understand that love is what I express to this person because of, what they've done for me. They're always there for me. The support, the mutual growth, the sense of security, right? So when we think about love in that sense, in more of a familial sense, like those are some of the attributes and characteristics of love. But truth be told, even if we think about those same things from a friendship lens or a romantic lens, you should have a sense of security, right? You should feel compassion, you should feel empathy, and you should really be able to be in an environment where you're feeling supported and you're feeling that mutual growth and that both of you guys are benefiting from having each other in your lives. And so when we think about, I won't say all the other different types of love, but focusing on some of those bigger buckets, things like, family love, where you generally feel a deep bond, like that unconditional support. You feel a sense of belonging, and these are the people that generally provide the foundation of love and connection that really shape our lives, right? Another major bucket of love could be, personal love, right? Where the big difference here is this is love that you have for yourself, right? And we're going to deep dive into this on a future podcast episode. So I don't want to spend too much time on it for now, but just to give you some highlights, personal love is really accepting yourself, being compassionate with yourself, emphasizing the importance of accepting yourself as you are, understanding that there may be areas that you want to grow and expand, but you're not down on yourself. You're really caring for yourself. You're being gentle with yourself the same way that you're gentle with other people when you speak to them. You want to have that same level of compassion and care for yourself as well. And then, of course, our last major bucket that I want to address as we establish this foundation of love is the enjoyment of activities, right? Like when you find an activity and you have a passion for something, when you are engaging in an interest or a pursuit that really just brings you joy and fulfillment and maybe even a sense of purpose, right? You go there and you are at peace, right? Like I'll personally never forget my first time going fishing. I never understood it. Like I never understood it. When you see fishermen, it's like you guys are just it just looks kind of boring, you know? Like you're just sitting here on this boat and you just have this line in the water and you're just waiting. And I'll never forget the first time I actually went fishing. It was so peaceful, right? Like it was just the most peaceful thing I think I had experienced in a while, especially at that particular point in my life. I was in my early 20s and we got up early in the morning at like 5, got on this like boat on the lake and threw our fishing lines out and just sat there. And of course, you have the excitement of when you feel that tug on your line. It's like, oh my goodness, I got my first fish. Like you begin to feel excited. But I say that to say we don't want to underestimate the the enjoyment and the role that love also plays in activities, right? Like that is very crucial and very important. And so how does all this relate to consistency, right? Like I know we talked through our three major buckets: family love, personal love, and the enjoyment of activities. But what role does consistency play in these areas? I am so glad that you asked, right? When we think about family love, one thing I really want to emphasize is the importance of expressing love daily. I know that it's not always the easiest thing to do because of time, right? Whether you feel like you don't have enough time in the day to take care of your professional responsibilities, and when you come home, you're drained and you don't really have time to, spend with your family or show them the love that you'd like to show them because you're so drained and you're so tired from work, right? But I do want to encourage you that even if you're making these daily deposits of love while you're at work, if you're on your lunch break and you send your entire family, let's say you have a spouse and you have a couple of kids, and you send them all a group text message just saying, hey guys, thinking about you, hope you guys are having a great day, love you guys. Like you would be surprised at one, how that would make you feel, because now you're extending love, and then two, to get that love back. Right? And so what is that going to do when you come home and now everyone's in a great mood because wow, like you did something that you might not have normally done, right? One, if you don't have a group chat with your family, just from my own personal experience, I would encourage you to make one, even if it's just a group chat and you guys are sending each other YouTube shorts or Instagram videos or whatever it is, whether it's like it's just really a space for you to connect with your family. And I know that I say that in family, I want to be clear, family looks different to everyone. Family is not a mom, a dad, and a child, right? A family is people that you feel closely connected with. You may not even be related to them by blood, right? You have people who have been in your life for 10, 20, 30 years, and you've built such a strong connection with them that they are like family to you. And because they are like family to you, we want to be cognizant that we pour into them with these kind gestures, these nice words, these acts of service, right? So hopefully that's one tangible action item that you can take from today's episode, is making sure that no matter how small it is, you'll be surprised that love truly doesn't necessarily need to be these grand gestures that we see on social media oftentimes, right? Like I remember when you think about getting engaged, an engagement used to be, something private that was done between you and your partner. Now, if you go on Instagram, it's like if you don't have this elaborate production of an engagement, you may feel left out. But I would encourage you not to. I would encourage you to remember what love truly is. And love is truly making someone feel special and loved and cared for with, again, kind gestures, words, acts of service, whatever you know that person that you love, right? Like that's the easiest way for me to articulate this point. It's like that person or those people that you love, and what would make their day. It doesn't need to be something huge, because you putting a smile on their face is the thing that is huge, right? I would also encourage you, when we think about, not just family love, but when we kind of steer into our second bucket of personal love, I would encourage active listening, right? Of course, it's easy to listen to your family. Well, I say easy, but it's not always easy to listen to your family, but it's easier to listen to someone else oftentimes than to listen to yourself, especially if you haven't been in the practice of being kind to yourself. You don't actively listen to what your mind is saying and what your body is saying, right? You don't necessarily take the time to nurture your own well-being. And so when we're practicing active listening, yes, it is 1000% important to practice that active listening with others, but we also need to be cognizant that we're practicing that with ourselves, and that we're making sure that, yes, it's important for me to listen to those around me, those that I love, but it's also important for me to listen to myself. Do I need to kind of, go on a walk once a day for 30 minutes during my lunch break versus just sitting around chatting with my coworkers? Or if you work from home versus just sitting in my home and watching TV for an hour, do I need to just go outside and be in nature for a while? As crazy as that may sound, I promise you, if you develop a habit of going outside for at least 10 to 20 minutes a day, you will begin to realize a change in your body physically and in your physiology. That is, again, an entirely different podcast that we will touch on, but just another word of encouragement for you guys. Make sure that you are actively listening to yourself and being empathetic with yourself. And then the next major thing from an action item perspective that I want to talk about is really going to hit on that third bucket of enjoyment of your activities, right? Prioritize time to do the things that you love. I know that, especially if you agree with the statement, there's just not enough time in the day. I know that this one may be hard for you. But what I want you to think about in this moment is, when I do the thing that I love to do, and I come back around my family, or I come back, if you don't necessarily live with anyone and you come back home, how does the rest of your day go? Right? If I were to go back to my fishing example, if you get up in the morning early and you go fishing and you come back, right? The level of internal peace and just equilibrium that you'll feel with yourself is more than enough for you to want to do that activity every single day, right? When you prioritize doing the things that you enjoy doing, it deepens not just your connection with that thing, but you'll also find that a byproduct of that is that you strengthen the bonds that you have with those you love, because you've already poured into yourself. You've already prioritized yourself. You've prioritized what's important to you. And because you've done that, now you can pour into others. Now you can deepen the connection. Now when your 4-year-old wants to play, you can play, right? Because you don't feel like, man, I wish I was out there fishing, right? Because you've already taken the time to yourself. And so again, that was a very simple example, but whatever that looks like for you, whatever prioritizing the enjoyment of activities that are important to you, even if it's 15 minutes a day, I promise you, start small because it will make a difference. This episode is sponsored by yours truly, Rakia Collins. And if you need to be reminded to stay consistent throughout your entire day, there's no better way to do that than to have visual cues throughout your day, right? And for those visual cues, visit our merch shop. We have phone cases that remind you to be consistent. We have coffee mugs that remind you about the importance of consistency. And so visit our site at thekeytoconsistency.com. And I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Awesome, guys. So, our next major area that I wanted to talk through, we've already kind of laid that foundation of love, right? And what love is, those three major buckets, and some action items to take along with those three major buckets. But I now want to focus on consistency and nurturing those relationships, right? And so when we think about just at a high level, what role does consistency play in relationships at all? Right? Consistency in love, right? Consistency plays a role, such a crucial role, I would say, in love because it really helps you build reliability and trust within your relationship. When you are consistent in the way that you show up for someone day in and day out, good or bad day, like you honor your commitments. You show that you're a person who can maintain, things like open communication. You are really laying the foundation of a sense of stability and a sense of security, right? So let's take this from the lens of, being a friend, right? When you are there for your friend and, your friend needs something and they feel like they can call you when they're in a bind or when something, has happened that they didn't anticipate happening. One, the fact that they can call you in those type of situations speaks volumes. And why does it speak volumes? Because it shows that you have consistently showed up for them and you've built a level of trust with them to where in their tightest moment, in their darkest moment, you're the person that they want to call, right? And so how does that happen? Again, it's one of those things that it doesn't happen overnight. And if you're listening to this podcast, that's probably something you'll hear me say time and time again, given the society that we live in where we want everything right at this very second. Love and consistency. You don't just wake up and love someone overnight. Right? Like you don't just wake up and say, hey, I'm in love with you, or hey, I love this activity, right? It's really those small daily disciplines that you do every single day. So, in the lens of a relationship, it is every single day with those acts of service, with showing up, with honoring your commitments, with doing those things that make the relationship feel valued and you make that person feel appreciated. They make you feel appreciated. Both of you guys feel understood by one another. And again, not just romantic, guys. Whether you feel understood by your pet, whether you feel valued and appreciated by your pet, right? Like, honestly, I used to have a dog up until he died, and pet love is real. It is real. Like, it is very, very real. The way you feel valued and appreciated by your animals, the way that, whether it is a child or a spouse or a friend, like, all of these different relationships that we have in our humans in our human existence, it really is important to know that in all those relationships we have to be consistent. We have to consistently show up for those people, right? So what does that look like? What does it actively look like to show up consistently for someone? Well, number one, commit to regularly checking in with that person or that activity, right? Kind of as we mentioned on our first talking point, if you love something, you have to commit to doing it, right? You have to commit to showing up and to checking in and to being there. When we think about this from a like family perspective, we have to think about, important milestones in people's lives, graduations, having a child, having a baby shower, birthday parties, right? Like being able to be there and be present and celebrating those major milestones, those major accomplishments and achievements, that is how you consistently nurture and grow a relationship, right? And lastly, which has really kind of been the gray area of all of these, but something that I haven't articulated clearly just yet, but hopefully this helps you guys. All of this doesn't mean a hill of beans if you do not make a conscious effort to prioritize and invest time in nurturing these relationships. Again, all types of relationships, and even relationships that you have with your hobbies, right? Like every single thing that you do, you have to realize that you've built a relationship with this thing, right? As simple as that may sound, I'm going to give you guys an example. And some of you guys may say, oh, she's crazy, but just go with me, right? When you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth and you take a shower, you are in a relationship with that toothbrush and with that shower. Not the two objects directly, but that relationship. Those are tasks that you do as a part of self-care for yourself. That is a part of personal hygiene, right? And what does personal hygiene lump up into? It lumps up into self-care, right? And so when you go through life and you look at, I am doing all of these different things. These aren't just random things, right? The way you walk into a room, you can think about it and say, man, I'm just walking into a room. No, 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 no. The confidence in which you walk into a room. Do you walk with your shoulders kind of slouched down? Do you look at the ground when you walk? Or do you walk into a room and you have all the confidence in the world and people can look at you and say, oh, this is a female, a male, this is a person, a human who has a certain level of confidence because of the way that they're walking, right? And so I want you guys to begin to shift from just thinking that you're going through life, but really putting in that conscious effort to do everything that you do in life with consciousness. And you may think, oh, I'm conscious because I'm living. No, 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 no. There are a lot of things that we do, even in our relationships with the ones that we love, that we do on autopilot because we've always done them and we've built up a muscle memory to do them a certain type of way, right? And so hopefully, making that conscious effort, while it's not going to be easy, it is an important part of building consistency in your relationships, is showing up, investing time, and really nurturing those relationships. And so with that, guys, the last major talking point that I wanted to talk to you guys today about is going to be overcoming those challenges, right? And how to sustain love, because this podcast would not be complete without truly understanding that there are challenges that are going to come as a part of relationships, right? When you think about your personal relationship with yourself, when you think about relationships with others, right? Like there are conflicts and disagreements that are going to happen, and you still have to find a way to overcome those challenges and really try to sustain that love, because the easiest thing that you can do is check out, right? The easiest thing that you can do is take the mindset that the grass is greener on the other side. And so I'm just going to quit because things are tough or things are difficult, right? That is probably the worst thing that you can do, because one, when you quit something, quitting can become a habit and you can build up a level of consistency within quitting. And that is my personal testimony right there with that, because I, at one point in my life, was a professional quitter, which we'll save for a future episode. But we're going to really dive into this point talking through how we can cultivate forgiveness, right? Cultivating patience and understanding how we can maintain that love during those difficult times. So, I hope to give you guys, as a part of, our third major talking point, some actionable steps that you can take when you are in a disagreement. And I wanted to specifically give the example of a disagreement, whether again is with a spouse, a family member, friendship, etc., because love is one of those emotions that is so strong. But the moment that whether you're on the phone, face to face, or you're texting someone and they say something that makes you angry, or you say something that makes them angry, and we all know when that conversation turns south, when something is done or said and it hits different. Like, we all know when that begins to happen. And so when we see that a conversation with someone that we love and care about is turning south, I would encourage you guys, first and foremost, to take a step back. And that is what goes back to our last point of conscious effort. Because taking a step back when you are in the heat of a moment is easier said than done. I am here as a living witness. When you are hot and ready, like a Little Caesars pizza, it is hard, because you may, especially if you're texting someone, man, like, you already have your comeback ready. Like, I'm about to nip this. You don't have to worry about this. Listen, I'm about to, like, all of those thoughts go through our heads. And, like, to be honest with you, it's one of those things that when you take a step back, the importance of taking that step back is that you begin to realize, if I were to send this text message, or if I were to communicate this with this person, it would be from a place of anger, right? And at that point, I'm trying to intentionally hurt you. I'm trying to say something that I know is going to hurt you or get under your skin because you've done that to me, right? And so when you take a step back, you can cool down. You can gain a different perspective. Your emotions begin to settle down. So what does this look like in reality? In reality, taking a step back for me, when I'm texting and I'm in the middle of a heated exchange, I put my phone down for 5 minutes. I will literally put my phone down, and I will be honest, I have an iPhone. And so when I still see that person, like their little text bubble popping up, I'm like, okay, you're still typing and I want to still type too, but I have to put my phone down. Like, I genuinely have to put my phone down and say, you know what? We're either going to go get some water. We're going to walk to the kitchen. Like, we're going to just breathe. And I force myself. And I want to use the word force because it is not easy to this day. It is not easy to do that. But that is step number one, I would say, is taking a step back. Number two, I would say, when we're having those heated disagreements, is really practicing active listening, right? Trying not to interrupt this person and become defensive, because again, we always, even in that heated moment, we want to leave space for open communication. We want to allow that person to feel like we are truly trying to empathize with them and understand their feelings and understand their concerns. And so making sure that we actively listen to better understand that person's perspective. Man, it is hard, especially when you feel like what you're saying is it's just not true. You're attacking me. Honestly, guys, I want to be honest, because I'm telling you guys this stuff, but I'm still actively getting better at this stuff, right? Like, this is not a podcast where she's trying to teach because she knows. No, she's trying to teach because she understands what it's like to be on the side where you do none of this. Trust me, I've been in a relationship where I've done absolutely none of this, and it was terrible, right? Compared to when I actually began to listen and take a step back. And I will say, when you're practicing active listening, the hardest piece about that is this person may be saying something about you that you don't want to hear, and now your pride and ego are involved. And when you begin to step into pride and ego territory, that's a no, 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 right? That's a place where you don't want to live, because now I'm going to say something because it's going to protect my pride and my ego, even if it hurts you, right? And we want to be kind, caring humans. We don't want to be people who just do things because our ego was bruised. Right? So again, just to kind of recap, number 1, take a step back. Number 2, practice active listening. Number 3, communicate openly and honestly, right? When that person is done speaking, we are going to openly and honestly, and I should also say with love, express our own feelings and thoughts. We're not going to attack. We're not going to blame, right? When you speak to them, make sure you use I statements, right? Like, I statements really help convey how the situation affects you personally. Whether you say, when you said this, I felt, right? Because you're understanding that, hey, this is a feeling. It may not be the truth, but this is how your words affected me, right? And when you've, stated how you felt, make sure that we focus on finding a common ground and not focusing on who is right and who is wrong. That is a plague for our society. We try to be right. You have to be right. You cannot be wrong. And again, someone who suffered from control issues, being right was all that mattered, but not to the detriment of your relationship with this person, right? If being right is more important than you being with this person, do you really want to be with this person, right? Because if you really love someone, you get to a point in a space mentally where you say, it's whatever works best for us, right? And so that leads me to number 4, seeking common solutions. It is important that you and this other person, whether it is in the moment, whether you both take a breather and come back, but that you collaborate with this person and you guys build beneficial resolutions to this. You understand the problem. Why did the problem happen? Let's sit down and let's brainstorm how we can work together to make sure that this either 1 doesn't happen again, or 2, if it does, we have a solution in place to make sure that it doesn't escalate to the point that it escalated the first time, right? A part of building common solutions is understanding that you're going to have to compromise. I know, another C word, and we'll talk about consistency and compromise in a future pod episode as well. But just for now, it is important to know that when you're thinking about love, and when you are in love, have love for someone, seeking common solutions to make sure that this issue, this disagreement does not, carry forward in your relationship, man, it is so critical. Number 5, probably the hardest thing, again, because this is really going to touch on that pride and that ego, making sure that you apologize. And the pause was for a dramatic effect, right? Apologize and forgive. You have to realize that even if you were not at fault, and now I want to say that again, even if you were not at fault and you do not believe that this was your fault, right? Sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes an apology is still good. Why? Because even if you're not at fault, the other person is the person who's at fault, and they are apologizing. They're saying that they're sorry for whatever might have happened, right? Even if they are extending their apology and you feel like, listen, I have nothing to apologize for, you can still apologize. You can say, you know what? I'm sorry as well. I'm sorry that this conversation got to a point where both of us were angry and it resulted in both of us having negative emotions towards one another for the past 30 minutes or so. Because again, even if you're not apologizing for the action itself, the environment was shifted as a result of this argument, right? In general, be if you're on the flip side of that, and if someone's apologizing to you, be open enough to forgive them. Be open enough to forgive them and to let go of any type of lingering resentment, right? It's as if the past is the past, right? Like you should throw yesterday into the sea of forgetfulness, to be honest, because if you continue to hold on to the things that someone did to you in the past, it's only going to cause you more headache and more harm than good, because now you're holding on to something. So anytime this person does something that remotely reminds you of what happened in 2018, now you're bringing up 2018 as if it were yesterday because you didn't fully let it go. Forgiveness is essential, guys, if we're going to move forward and we're going to rebuild that trust. And then lastly, number 6, we want to make sure that we learn from this experience, right? Personal growth is what comes out of disagreements if you're willing to see the areas that you can grow in, right? When you're doing your own, outside of brainstorming together, when you're doing your own reflections, understanding like what triggered you. If you had a negative response, what triggered me to respond this way, right? And if something like this, if something similar to this happens in the future, how can I commit to myself that I'm going to solve this better? I'm not going to have the same type of reaction, right? And so just again, to kind of repeat, those action steps we can take 1 through 6. Number 1, we're going to take a step back. Number 2, we're going to practice active listening. Number 3, we're going to communicate openly and honestly, and don't forget, with love. Number 4, we're going to seek common solutions. Number 5, we're going to apologize and forgive. Number 6, we're going to learn from the experience. And so hopefully throughout our conversation today, you've picked up on a little nugget, of advice that you are going to implement within your own relationships with those that you love and that you care for. And of course, this episode will not be complete without a verse from the best, most favorite, most reliable book in the world, the Bible. We're going to get our verse today from 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 through 7. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. All right, guys, remember, consistency breeds mastery and transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. And until next time, bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of The Key to Consistency. We'd love for you to review this podcast wherever you are listening to it. Please feel free to follow us on Instagram at thekeytoconsistency.com. And if you enjoyed this episode and you found something that was beneficial to you, of course, please share it with a friend and someone else that you think would benefit from starting their own consistency journey.